Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Jobology podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and today my guest is somebody that I met through a previous guest of our podcast. Her name is Ryan, and she's a children's author. She's going to talk to us all about getting a book published and overcoming writer's block. So without further ado, Ryan. First off, I just want to say thank you for joining me, Ryan.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I've never been on a podcast before, so this is fun.
Nice. Well, it's super easy. I mean, we're very casual, relaxed vibe here, so don't no stresses, no nothing. But one thing we always like to start with, and kind of how we like to start out the podcast, is by creating a baseline almost. So if I were to this, and this may be the same answer, but if I were to ask you like, hey, we just met, I'm like, hi, Brandon, what do you do for work? How would you answer that question versus like, what do you have like an official title per se?
I honestly don't know, only because I've only been an author for like 2 weeks, so it's very
Oh, okay.
new. So I don't know if
Nice.
that would be the first thing that I would say. But if in a perfect world, if that's what I went by, I would say I'm a social media marketer, and then on the side, I've an author, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know, Jess, we work together, so we're kind of in the same boat, I guess. But yeah, I guess social media marketer and then new author.
Nice. Yeah, Jess was on our human design podcast. So if you guys haven't checked that out, go back and check that one out. That's how I met Ryan, is through Jess. She connected us. So I get that of like I kind of got that with the podcasting thing when I first started doing it. People are like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm a podcaster." And then they're like, "Cool," but and I'm like, "Well, I only have like 2 episodes in, so it's
Yeah,
kind of hard to call myself a podcaster yet." But
exactly.
I get that vibe. Why? Like, why write a book? Why write it's a children's book again. Like, we haven't necessarily covered all this, but it is a children's book. Kind of why write a book in general?
Well, okay, so I guess like the backstory on it is that I used to be a teacher for preschoolers and kindergartners when COVID first hit. So these were kids who weren't in an actual public school because the schools were shut down, but a teacher who was laid off opened her home to, because she had two kids of her own. So she wanted other kids to kind of have the most normal experience as they could during a time where nothing was normal.
Right. Yeah, the world is unnormal.
Exactly. So I applied for the job through like here.com because at the time I was scrambling for jobs because I had lost my jobs at the time. I was babysitting and I was running track. So literally everything was just unknown. So
Yeah, just a halt on life.
exactly. So I was applying for jobs and I ended up getting this one. And so I ended up doing it for the fall of 2020. And we used a book that's called Big Life Journal. And it's essentially the same concept as mine. It's sort of interactive journal, but it was on like being grateful, self-belief, perseverance. So kind of like life things that didn't necessarily, I wouldn't say count as like emotional intelligence. And I just had an idea like, what if this existed for kids that was based on emotional intelligence, like things that I know they're going to use when they're 15, 25, 35, 45, 50. So that's kind of where the inspiration came from. And so 2 years later, I have a book.
Nice. Yeah. So, real quick, what is the title of your book?
My book is called Learning to Navigate Through My Social Emotional World. Kind of a long title, but yeah.
No, totally, but it encompasses what we're trying to do. So it's not a long title where then I at the end go, okay, so what is the point of? No, it's like, oh, okay, I know what we're trying to get to. And then it's aimed for more like adolescent children or
So my target age group would be for, I guess, kindergartners through sixth grade, and it is intended for like maybe the little ones who are still learning to read and write for a parent, or guardian, or teacher to go through it with them. Just because I wouldn't expect a 5-year-old to look at it and be like, I know exactly what this person's talking about, but maybe for like the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth graders, like they can do that on their own.
okay. So it's not necessarily like, kindergarten and then after kindergarten they're never going to use it again. It's something that you can use throughout, growing up.
Mhm.
And then this is the question that I've like been kind of most curious about is how do you like become an author? How do you create a book? How do you I have no idea on the process. I am starting at zero.
I didn't know either. So, yeah, I didn't know the process either. I didn't think it was actually going to become a book. I didn't think it was actually going to be published. So, I literally started with writing in a binder, like just pieces of paper, like my ideas. I started looking up different websites to go through to print out my books. And this is all like 2020 fall, like September, October maybe. And literally just like doing research, like how to do it. I didn't know if I should self-publish or go through a publisher. Literally had no idea, like anything.
I don't even know like where to again, like where to start. Like you're like, I don't know if I should self-publish or go to a publisher. I didn't know you could do either. Like I have nothing.
It was literally such like a weird. It was a long journey. Well, I think it might be quick for some, and for others, it like for myself, it felt like a really long time. But
Like a long learning experience of like
exactly. It was literally just like learning along the way. And so I like to draw, so I've been drawing a lot on my iPad and I use an app called Procreate where you can literally just like you can draw on it literally like with a pen, you can use different text. And so I started once I finished with like my ideas, I started writing them in my notes app on my iPad and then I started doing it on Procreate and then I didn't like how it was looking. Like I didn't like the fonts that I chose. I didn't even realize I needed margins. Like I literally didn't know anything about
exactly
anything.
yeah, like you just go.
So
It's just like, hey, I got an idea. I'm gonna keep going with
yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah. So then I left it alone for like 6 months, maybe over 6 months, because I gave up on it. I was like, okay, like this is not gonna happen. I ran out of ideas. And I didn't realize I didn't like it until after the fact. I started using Canva, and Canva is just like a really cool app you can use for like people who are marketing. They use it a lot for social media, for Instagram, Facebook, like all of that.
I should probably be looking into this.
Yeah,
Like I've never even heard of this.
no, yeah, it's great. And I don't even remember why I started using it. I don't know if it was for work. I can't remember. But then I started like looking through the fonts and all of the clip art, and I was like, wait, I can like make my book on this. Like I can just start making like literally just pages and pages. And so I started looking at what I made on Procreate, like the app that I didn't like, and then started transferring it to Canva. And I was like, whoa, like this is so much nicer. I can be more creative with my colors. I can make color palettes. Like there's literally just so much more creative freedom, I guess, and there was margins. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely like a game changer. So
Like re-inspired you almost. Like, okay.
exactly. So like literally if I could show you like the fonts that I use in the first, I was like, what was I thinking? Like the colors weren't what I wanted. And so yeah, I started doing it on Canva and then I found inspiration again and then I hit another writer's block where I was just like, okay, well, I redid all the pages, now what? I didn't have any like fresh ideas. I didn't know because the book at the time was probably only like 30 pages, which is, I mean, that's a big like step to start, but it wasn't enough to where I was like, oh, this is the book. So I think I did hit another writer's block, and then my mom would text me every now and then and be like, "Hey, is your book done? Like, when is your book gonna be done?" And I was like, "No, like I hit a writer's block." And she would always ask because she would works at home, and so she would hear like the news in the background of like them talking about mental health and kids and how relevant it was, especially for the kids who've been isolated for so long during COVID and weren't getting the social interactions they needed to build that emotional and social intelligence. So she was really just, she was the one who was just like, yeah, like you should write it or keep going and keep going. And so
Juicing you up.
yeah, so
Hmm.
she basically kept pushing me. And so, yeah, I just kept going. And then two
Nice.
years later, I figured out who I wanted to go through in terms of publishing. I was looking into publishers to like to help me get it out, but I didn't want to pay that much.
Yeah, so that's one of my questions is like, does a publisher reach out to you and go, hey, we want to publish your book, or do you reach out to them and go, hey, would you like to publish this? Like, how does that work?
I've never had anyone reach out to me. I mean, it's only been out for a couple weeks, so I don't think there's enough word out yet for someone to reach out to me, but I did reach out to a couple publishers to kind of just get an idea. Like when I looked, I literally looked up like best publishers to publish a book. And the top three I contacted, and it didn't seem like they were interested in what I was putting out. They were more concerned about the money that I would give them to help me get it out. And literally, like I tried to ask questions, and one of them was just like, "Oh yeah, so this like we can do that with this package," and like they literally didn't even answer my question, and they just seemed very concerned about the money. And I was like, "Well, if I'm gonna spend $3,000 to have someone else publish it, like I might as well figure it out for myself and publish it myself."
Spend the 3,000 on educating yourself to how to publish something. Yeah.
Exactly. So I decided to self-publish and go that route. So I looked up self-publishing sites and like the top 10, and I went through Lulu, not a sponsored ad. But but you know, so I ended up self-publishing, and it was totally free to publish my book, and I got like my proof copies, and it was actually really a lot easier than I thought in terms of getting it out. The frustrating part was getting a proof copy and seeing mistakes.
Oh, oh, that's got to be like so disheart. Like I put all my thing in.
No,
Oh,
yeah, I have like 40 copies of books that just all have mistakes. And that's also my own fault for not being patient because I was so excited and I just want to get it out. So I was like, okay, I fixed one mistake, I ordered another copy, and then I saw there was another mistake. And I was like, and I was like, this is the universe telling me to like chill out and
slow
to just
down,
hold
breathe.
on.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of, I guess, a journey, and now it's published, and now it's the time to get the word out on it. Um, and try to find different avenues for marketing. So I'm still doing my research on that and having a lot of people help. So like this podcast is going to help a lot too. So
Hey, I'm trying. I try. That's all I can do. I mean, we don't have the great like most viewers in the world yet, but we're
not yet, but
plug
it's
plugging
growing.
away. Yep, plugging away little by little. Um, that's awesome. I mean, I get that like, hey, I see an issue going on in the world. I want to do something to fix it. I have an idea to fix it. I hit my stumbling blocks along the way, but I figure out how to kind of overcome it and eventually get to where we are today.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you.
Is there, so this may not apply, but I always kind of like to talk about the path people take, and we kind of discussed it, but is there like, I mean, do you take like writing courses to learn to be an author? Is there like, is it just kind of the self-teaching, go online, Google, how to publish, blah, blah, blah?
For myself, yes, I think like I never grew up thinking like I'm going to be a writer or I'm going to publish a book. So I never really the idea never came into my head until like 2 years ago. But I always was someone who enjoyed writing. Um, I always like to write in journals. I would like to buy like since I was 8, I have like 3 journals that I've always kept. And yeah, I've always just enjoyed writing. Once I figured out that I actually wanted to publish the book, then I did my research in terms of like how to do it, what people are looking for, the best ways to go about it. And yeah, it was literally just like a learn as I go type thing. I didn't take classes because I didn't think I needed to.
Also, like, you wouldn't take a class if it's something you never thought you were gonna. It's not like I'm gonna take a bunch of writing courses because I don't think I'm ever gonna be an author. So why would I do that? Yeah.
And I mean, I do have pretty good like grammar, spelling, that type of thing. So I didn't think I needed anything like that. And for this book in particular, it needed to be in very simple terms because it is for kids.
For the audience, yeah.
Right. And I literally just wrote in my own voice. Like I didn't, I mean, obviously I did simple it in the most simplest form that I could. And I didn't think I needed someone to teach me how to do it.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Learn as I went.
That's I Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing with this.
Yeah. I mean, you're
Learn as
doing
I
great.
go. I appreciate it. Well, thank
I've
you.
been watching them like while I was working. I would like hear it and listen to it in the background. And I was like, oh yeah, this I think I'll be okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not this we're not it's not a hard-hitting interview by any sense of the imagination, by any stretch of the imagination. Uh if you can kind of like try and transport yourself back in time, back into like the days when you're in the heat of this writing, what does an average day look like for you? Is it something where you wake up and you write all day long? Is it something where you go, hey, I'm going to block off time? Is it like I gotta, have my coffee in the morning, breakfast, relax, or like what kind of is your average day look like as you're in the midst of writing the book?
So when I started, I was working 3 jobs. I was
Oh,
in school.
what?
So I mean, my days were super busy.
And then you're like, I'm gonna throw a book on top of this too. Why not? Yeah,
Yeah, so
I don't have enough on my plate. Add a book to
no,
it.
none at all. Yeah, so it was during my senior year of college. So I graduated from Cal State Fullerton, and it was my fall semester. So I drove kids to school in the morning. Like I was like technically a nanny for 2 kids that I was working with for a couple years. And that year, that's when school resumed back in person. So I was driving them to school in the morning from I'd get there at 7. I would go to my school, the teacher job at 8:15, right? So there's like an hour and 15 like that I'm going from here to here. And then I would work until 3. And then I would go tutor one of my kiddos who had autism. And then I would be listening to because everything was online for me for school. So I would literally be listening into class while I was tutoring.
Oh my gosh. You have a way better work ethic than I do. No chance.
And then I would go home, I would shower, I would eat, and then I would write from maybe like when I was like super like just writing.
Clicking. Yeah.
Yeah, I would write from like 7:30 p.m. to maybe like 11 p.m.
And then go to sleep and do it all again.
Yeah, and then anytime that I had time in between like work and school or anything like that, I would literally just be writing in the car or like drawing my visuals or writing notes down. So literally any downtime that I had was dedicated to writing or coming up with ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, because I could imagine like as somebody who's trying to develop a book, it's like, okay, if inspiration strikes or if something starts to click, I need to figure out just to write it. Like I don't have time to go, okay, I'll think of this late. Like, nope, it's now, it's happening. It's so okay, that makes sense of like, but if you do have such a busy schedule, it's something of like, I'm just fitting it in where I can.
Yeah. And there'd be times too, even in the second or the first half of 2021, I stopped working the teaching job and I ended up being a full-time nanny for 2 of the kids who went to that school.
Oh, okay.
I think just with COVID, it was just too much exposure all the time. And so I decided like to take care of myself and my health first. So then the same parents whose kids left, they decided the same thing. And they were like, hey, well, we still need someone to watch our kids while we work from home. So do you want to come nanny from like 8 to 5? And I was like, okay, like
Why not?
easy money, 2 kids, whatever. And there would be the times where like they would be in the pool. I would have like my iPad with me and I was just like, I have to
Going.
do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So literally any time that I could find where I didn't need to pay my full attention to them or anything else, then
Sure.
I would be writing.
When you were discussing like writing blocks earlier, hitting like a writing block, like do you have a quick go-to way to overcome that? Or is it something where it's like there is no quick go-to, it's a stressful waiting period until it's gone?
Um, I would say that like for me, when my writer's blocks did happen, it would start when because one thing about me is I like to get a lot of jobs. So as you can kind of get.
As I could tell from the 3 jobs and then add author onto it.
So when I graduated, I started an ABA job, which is applied behavior analysis. So I was working with kids who were on the autism spectrum. So when I got that job, everything about the book I forgot about. Like my iPad was tucked under my bed, not touched for months. And I like literally have to charge it for like an entire hour before it turned back on. Like that's how dead it was. And so I don't think there was anything that I could have done to really overcome it. I just think like life happened and I needed to put this on hold. And I also didn't have inspiration at the time to start it again. I didn't have any new ideas. They all like all the chapters needed more pages, but I just like what else like I didn't know what else to write. Like what else am I supposed to do? Like how can I like it just was I knew it wasn't enough to publish. So I was like, okay, like I just forgot about it. And then that kind of honestly went on until the beginning of 2022. So it like there would be really long periods of just like not touching it, not thinking about it, or I would think about it, then I would just get mad that I couldn't think of anything new.
And then mom calls and you're like, Mom, stop talking to me about it.
No,
I'm
literally, I
doing
just be
something
like,
else. Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's just
Yeah.
like I don't have anything new to add. And
Yeah.
then I think the beginning of this year, I don't know what was happening at the time, but like all of a sudden I thought of it and I was like, dude, I need to keep writing. Like, what am I doing? Like I needed to just keep writing. So I would have like my little bursts of inspiration, bursts of like ideas, and then like 3 weeks would pass and then another burst would happen. So like I don't think I was doing anything intentionally to try to overcome it. It would like the moments of inspiration just kind of happened. And then I was watching a Red Table Talk, which is like Jada Pinkett Smith and her mom and Willow, and they had a guest on. It was an episode about alopecia, and one of this little girl's mom, the little girl's name is Rio, and she was 12, and she ended up committing like this was like what they were talking about. She ended up committing suicide
Oh
because she
wow.
was bullied for her alopecia.
Oh wow.
And it obviously like just made me super emotional, brought tears to my eyes, like I was like ugly crying. And
Yeah.
I was like, these kids like are ending their lives at 12 years old because they're being bullied. And it's like that's taught. So like if these kids can be taught when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, like what you say hurts other people and like can drive them to get to a point where they don't want to live anymore, like literally I was just like, dang, like this is I need to get my book out because if it can help one kid learn to be kind to someone else, if it can help one kid learn to love themselves no matter what, like that's what inspired me. I was like, okay, like
Yeah.
I need to get this book out. So that was kind of one inspiration that drove me to finish the book.
Nice.
And so I guess, yeah, like I said, it wasn't intentional getting overcoming those writer's blocks. It was just like some things happened randomly. And then I was like, okay, cool. Like, but once I watched that Red Table Talk, like I did not stop.
That was like the spark that lit the fire, and there we go. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah.
No, definitely.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was looking for. Like, hey, I hit right, but then sometimes for me, or like I'm sure for other people, it's something where I like want to go search out the inspiration or search out and like try and find it somewhere. And then other times it's like passively I'm watching something or I hear something and I'm like, oh wait, that okay, yeah, oh, you know what? Yeah, and then that sparks it. So that's where my what I was kind of curious about was like, is there one or the other? But that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like every time I went to go search for something, I couldn't find anything. Like I was just like, okay, at this point, like it just has to come to me. And I kind of feel like that's what it is in for me in general, like with life. Like if I look for it, it's not gonna happen or it's not gonna come. But if it when it comes to me, then I'm like, okay, like let's go.
Yeah, almost every job I've had before doing podcasting was not something that I was like, I'm gonna go get this job. I want to apply for it. It was always something more of like, hey, I think you'd be good at this, or hey, there's an opening at my company. Why don't you come work for? And I'm like, oh, okay. And so it's always like those things of like it kind of happening to me as opposed to like me trying to seek it out and never finding it.
Yeah.
So no, I totally relate to that. For being an author or now developing the book, you had mentioned about self-publishing. I'm assuming there's a cost that comes in with self-publishing. Is there like I mean, I guess maybe this isn't the right way to phrase this question for you particularly, but like, is there a pay scale or like range, or is it literally however many books I sell, that's how much money I make?
Yeah, so for me, I didn't pay anything to self-publish, which was really nice that they didn't like say, oh, you have to pay monthly fees for us to keep your book on our shop, like whatever. So I'm very fortunate that that didn't happen. I would say the revenue would is technically up to me because I decided how much the book was worth, and like I knew what the printing costs were, and there was like a minimum of what I can charge. And I guess I don't even know the numbers, like 30% on each book, which isn't a lot, but also at the same time, my first goal isn't to make money off the book. It's more so just I wanted it to be out for the kids and for the future of our generation of kids. And so I guess I'm $4 a book, maybe, if that. And
Okay.
um
But that's how the revenue is, obviously. It's not like I have a deal and so I get paid X amount regardless of if a book sells or but it's right now at this stage it's hey, whatever I sell, that's what I make.
Yeah, because there's like the printing costs of each book, and then Lulu gets a portion of the fee for even having my book, which I get. There's like a
Yeah, they're
fulfillment
the
fee.
ones holding. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, so and then my shop is set up through Shopify, so Shopify also has like a $2 fee. And so literally just all these fees, and then
yeah.
um yeah, so it's more so just like you decide how much you want to charge your customers, because my book is 17.95, which in my opinion isn't expensive because I looked at like not competitors, but other people who have journals or books for kids.
Things in the market.
This, yeah, and their books are like $25, and to me that's expensive, and I wanted it to be like as affordable as possible. So I could be making more if I decided to make it more expensive, but like I said, I didn't want it. I want it to be like affordable for anyone.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, if that's kind of my thing with this too, of like, yeah, it'd be nice when I can start making, money or if money starts coming in, because then I can do more things and, whatever. But it's also, I didn't start this to go, oh, I'm going to be a rich podcaster. I started this to go, hey, I need something to do. I want to work for myself. I don't want to work for anybody else. And I like talking to people. What can I do?
Yeah,
And so, yeah,
right.
no, totally kind of the same
I
vibe
mean,
with like,
eventually I would love,
yeah,
to
sure.
make some money, of
Yeah, of
course, but
course.
like
Why
right now
not?
for starting, like I just wanted to be out there.
Yeah, and that may be the goal, but that's not the intention. The intention isn't going in to become a best-selling, multi-million dollar author. The intention is, hey, I see a need. I have something I think that can help fix that need. Here we go. Gotcha. Totally. Do you have like an assistant or like people that help you, or like, is it literally just you?
I had people look at the book. I sent it to like my girlfriend read it a bunch of times. I sent it to my friend Megan. I sent it to my mom. I sent it to one of my old teachers from she was my third and fourth grade teacher, and we're pretty close considering that like it's been a really long time since I've known her. So she was one of the first to read the book and give me the like feedback. So like I've definitely had help from a lot of different people to just give me feedback on the book. Um, the teacher that I was talking about, she even gave me a idea for a title change because at first it was just emotional intelligence, and she was like, well, it kind of goes into like social intelligence too, so maybe add social to the title. And I was like, dude, you're a genius. Um, yeah, so I've had a lot of help with the book, and even my dad, he works at a school district in Chula Vista, and he gave it to someone who he works with, and I didn't even know like that she was like this. I didn't know like that she was someone who had power, and she's like the director of like curriculum, and I was like, oh wow. So she's helping a lot with like doing her best to try to get it out to people. Like she bought 10 books and she's going to give it to counselors and other teachers. She gave me the idea to like make a teacher's edition. So literally like I'm getting a lot of help from a lot of different people, and I had a lot of eyes on the book too. So
It's like a lot of good feedback as well.
yeah, so I don't have an assistant, but I did have a lot of help throughout the process.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to like force this author into like my outline. So I'm like, okay, so we always go job hierarchy. How can I something? Do you have an assistant? Do you have a team? Like, okay, I get okay.
Not yet,
Not
not yet.
necessarily everything fits. Fair enough. Okay. Is there, if you were could go back in time and at day whatever, 3, 4, 5, right when you're first starting out, you could tell Ryan something, give yourself a piece of advice, and you're either like, man, this is tough, or man, is there something you could go back and be like, hey, look, sucks right now, but it's going to be great later on, or
I would literally say that. I would say not to rush it because I think that was one of my downfalls of writing because I just had so much excitement about it that I would say I rushed the process. I mean that I didn't rush until like the last like 100 meters of the race type thing. And so I would definitely tell myself to like chill out, like know that it's going to be great, trust myself to know that it's gonna take time. There was literally so many things that I would tell myself. Not to order so many copies of my book until I know
yeah,
there's no
yeah.
mistakes.
Proofread again and again and again. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so
Okay.
funny because I even like told my dad, I was like, I sent him a couple copies. I was like, yeah, there's an error on page 100. He was like, where? And I was like, on the top. Because my brain would like automatically fill in what I knew it was supposed to say.
Of course.
So like it just I didn't he didn't he, yeah, even he was like, "Oh, I wouldn't even have known because like I read it the right way." And I was like, "Yeah." So literally definitely proofread before I order.
Read it out loud in front of the mirror. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, I did. That's the problem. Like I
Oh
read it
no.
so many
Oh
times.
no.
But I think that was the most frustrating part. But also I think just being patient with like the people I sent the book to, like not being like, "Oh, if they don't read it, then they don't read it." But I should have waited until they read it to
Gotcha. Okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, like be take your time a little bit more, a little more patience. Gotcha. Okay. Um, this kind of portion of the podcast here, we like to have some job specific questions that are more author centric or author related. We'll see if they work. If they don't, if you're like, ah, it doesn't really apply, like totally fine. We'll skip and go to the next one. I don't mind. Um, my first question that I have here is like, how would you describe, you kind of mentioned, a background in child development of like nannying, teaching kids. Would you describe your background in child development and then going to write a book for like a younger audience? Like what's the relationship there? I mean, obviously there seems like an obvious one of like, hey, I was working with kids, so I'd write for kids. But I mean, is it that simple or is there something more to it of like, I really connect with kids and so that's why?
Yeah, I definitely would say kids are my passion. I would say kids are like the love of my life. I've literally been around kids since I was like 16. Like my first job, I was working in a kid's hair salon as a receptionist. So there was just kids everywhere. Like you said, I was babysitting, nannying, tutoring, ABA therapy, like literally just everything. Yeah, and so I would say I've always just built a really close connection to the kids that I worked with. I would definitely say I have like a childlike attitude, so it would be easier for me to get along with kids. Even one of the kids that I drove to school, I met her when she was 11, and then I was with her from like 12, 13, 14, 15. I don't know if that's accurate, but she's 15, turning 16 now. And so like we always like had like a super close bond. Um, so I just think it was just easy for me to connect with kids. And when I was a teacher, the reason I think I got inspired then too is because I would firsthand see how my kids were solving their problems and like dealing with each other when there was, little dramas. There'd be kids that didn't
Tension.
like each other. Yeah, there would be
Mm,
kids who didn't like each other, and everybody knew it. Like they were the ones who were always fighting at school, and seeing how they dealt with their emotions and how they dealt with like the problem solving, like what would be their first instinct to do, go to a teacher, try to like solve it on their own, or
hmm.
call each other names or push each
Use
other
your
down. Like I
fists.
saw
Yeah.
that, yeah, I saw that
Hmm.
firsthand, and I was like, dang, like you guys need to work on your little problem solving skills. And I know every kid is different, every kid is raised different, so it was more so just kind of a literally went hand in hand, like what I was seeing in real time to what I wanted to write about. It was all just literally like intertwined.
Gotcha. Okay, so that makes sense. It's, what kind of write what you know. Like this is what I know, this is what I'm gonna go with. Totally makes sense. Uh, I'm really interested in inspiration. We've talked about inspiration a few times on this. Uh, as an author, do you have like a who, what, where, when, why of inspiration? I mean, I know that's kind of a little mouthful there, but is there like a place you like to go or a person you like to talk to or a thing you like to eat, or I don't know.
I mean, I would say that like my kids are a place of inspiration.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely can see like say that like when I'm with my kids or that's like when I'm happiest and when I can just feel like at peace. And also I think my girlfriend too, she was there for me the entire process and like the days that I cried in frustration that the book wasn't coming out right, the print was off, or when I needed help and she read my book 1,000 times. She definitely was someone who kept me going.
Yeah, nice. That's what my partner does for me. I mean, she's the producer and everything else on this thing, so I totally get that of like sometimes you need that outside source of motivation or inspiration, definitely.
Yeah. And even like just being with my family too, like in the times that I felt frustrated with the book. I mean, I didn't really talk about it directly, but I know being around them was like what brought me peace in my times of like frustration. I have like three sisters. I have my dad, my mom, and so my mom definitely was someone who inspired me to keep going, to keep doing it because she knew that kids needed this book in times where I didn't feel like they did.
Yeah.
Mostly, I would say would be people in my life who inspired me and who kept me going, and like especially like the kiddos who I love. So I think that would be my
That's like the
inspiration.
drive. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I get that. I totally get
yeah.
that. Um, when developing a children's book with like pretty what I would consider complex themes, how do you like present that to someone at that age of development?
Yeah, so I totally would get what you mean when like because emotional intelligence and social intelligence it can get like very complex with because there's so many different things that I think go into it.
I think there's, I mean, just like a lot of things that could go over a kid's head, or like that they're just like, yeah, totally, I understand it, but they don't understand it.
Right. So I chose so the book is divided into like five different parts or chapters and I picked the five things that I thought would be the most crucial, the most important, and the easiest to explain to a kid. So it's divided into it's emotions, kindness, empathy, self-love, and problem solving. So for each chapter, I made it relevant to something that I thought would be something that the kids would see. So I would literally pick like Owen stole Dylan's truck. So like literally like the most like things that they would see at school. Like someone took someone's toy, someone pushed someone down, someone called somebody names. My brother took my toy without asking. Literally something that could be as relevant as possible to little kids. And the way it's written is like I would explain like the what and give an example and then how because it's an interactive journal. It's not something that they just read through. So they would have to apply whatever they learned from like the first two pages into like scenarios where they can practice what they would say if they wanted to express how they felt. Um, like circle or color in the box that had like the best solutions. So it's like asking someone for help versus pushing someone down because you feel upset. So there it's very like interactive. It's very like applicable to things that they would go through at school. So I literally trying to make it as simplified as possible without going too in depth about it. But I think they're all things that they can apply to in real life, and they're all going to be applicable to when they're like 45 and in a work office.
Yeah, kind of like make the language digestible so that they can understand it, but also make the content, engaging so that they're not bored or not, over this book, make it something they want to do.
Yeah, so definitely I included things for them to like write down. Like I added like coloring pages where like there's like a Dr. Seuss quote that's written in like block letters so they can just color them in. So yeah, it's I tried to make it as engaging and as fun as possible because I know like for myself, if I were a 5-year-old, I wouldn't want to write a bunch of words all the time. Like I would want to color, I would want to draw pictures, I would want to scribble.
Exactly. If I would much rather, as a kid, if somebody's like, "Hey, how do you feel?" I'd much rather draw a picture to show you how I feel than sit there and try and like come up with it in my head and this is how I feel. Yeah, totally. Okay. I was looking through the book online,
Hmm.
and I know that it's intended for children, obviously, but it seems like the role of the parent or the guardian is pretty important. Can you kind of discuss like, was that intentional? Was that something that you like a happy accident where you're like, oh hey look, but or was that like a hey I'm making a book intentionally with this purpose?
Yeah, so I did make it intentional. Like I said before, like for the kids who are like kindergarten, first, second, they're still in the process of learning how to read and write. Some of the words might be too big for them to do on their own. So I did make it a point to make sure that it was known that parents should be involved. There's like two about me pages. One is about the reader themselves, like the kid, and then there's one for it's like my journal helper. So it's you can tell that an adult would fill it out because like in
Is supposed to be
parentheses
there.
under yeah, like in parentheses, like if someone's helping you with this journal, like write about them, like what's your name, who are they to you, what's their favorite colors. So I did make it intentional for that reason, and also if I were a parent, like say I don't have kids, so I can't really
Okay.
relate, but if
Me
I were
neither,
a
but hey, we can
parent,
try.
yeah. So if I had like a 7-year-old and they were doing this journal on their own and say like I wanted to look through it. So there's like mood flowers in the book where there's like colors that are designated to a certain emotion. So like yellow is for happiness, red is anger, blue is sadness, gray is frustration, and purple is fear. So if I were a parent or a teacher and I saw that one of my kids' book, they had all blue and red and gray petals, I would be like, oh, like my kid's not happy and I don't know why, you know? So they could be like a red flag, like, hey, maybe I should check on my kid and like see if they're doing okay, if there's anything at school that's happening that I don't know about. Or if you're a teacher, you can look at it and say like maybe there's something that at home that I don't know about so that it's like teacher and a parent could get together and figure out like what's going on. And there's even like weekly check-ins where they can reflect on how their week is. So if you can see that their weekly check-ins are always like the sad face, and there's a section for them to write 3 things about what they love about themselves. If they're not writing anything about what they love about themselves, like there's obviously
There's
something where like,
problems.
yeah,
Hmm.
so I did intend it to have like the parents involved just because it's important to know like, you know, what your kid's going through if there's something if there's different ways that they express their emotions than other kids, like it might not be like the typical like, hey, like I need help, or it might be like
It might be like a hey, I'm acting out, but actually it's because I'm sad or I'm whatever, as opposed to I'm mad. Like it might not be a mad thing. It might be, well, let's go look at well, what happened today? Oh, okay.
so I think it could definitely be even a learning experience for the parents too to kind of see what their kids need in terms of like expressing their emotions, like what they need when they're sad or when they're mad, but you know, what goes on at school and stuff like that. So
Yeah, what makes them happy, what makes them sad. I love it. We mentioned that, hey, we're about a few weeks into being a, author with a book out there and everything, but do we have more projects planned for the future? I mean, you mentioned Teacher's Edition, but is there, if you are you going to write like a fantasy book or like a, nonfiction or something crazy?
I don't think a fantasy or nonfiction, but I do have like the idea. I have like the title of the book done. I mean, it's the same as this book. It would just be a teen version or a young adult version, which I think will be a little bit more challenging because I do have to write it in a way that's not too simple,
Not too childish. Yep.
right? But enough for like, yeah, trying to figure that out. Because I think I mean, for people who didn't have this when they were kids can still benefit from it. So that's in the works. I don't know how long that's going to take. Might be another couple of years, but
I don't know how long a writer's block's going to last. You never know.
yeah. And I'm trying to see, I mean, I don't know how this is going to work, but I know I can reach out to people, but trying to make like a Spanish version of this
Okay.
book,
That's a great idea.
you know, for the kids who are not the best English speakers. I think having a Spanish version, and especially for parents who don't speak any English, like it would be beneficial for both. So trying to figure out how to get that translated into proper Spanish.
But it's also something too of like, hey, if I have a student and I'm teaching they're predominantly a Spanish speaking student, they speak English, but hey, we have some, communication issues here and there. If they have this journal, I can look at the journal and go, oh, okay, now I know you're mad, or I know you're sad, or I know you're happy, or I know what's going on in your day. As opposed, I don't necessarily have to know the right words, but I can see the colors. I could see what's going on. I could see you, scribbling angrily, and go, okay, something's probably going on there.
Yeah, and I'm even like for Spanish immersion classes because I was in Spanish immersion when I was a kid, so I know it'd be beneficial for schools who do have Spanish immersion programs as well, and they don't want to have a book that's in all English, but they want to try to do it in Spanish. I think it would be beneficial for that too. So yeah, trying to see how that process is gonna work. Don't really know what the next steps are to make that happen, but
It's kind of the learning on the fly again.
yeah,
Next things is like, okay, now I've got the one book done. Now I got to learn how. What do we do on the next one?
right.
Totally, that's
Yeah. So
awesome.
I guess those would be my future projects for now. Yeah.
We have a recurring segment. I don't know if it's going to play here. We're going to try, but as a just regular everyday citizen, just me, just regular old Brandon, how can I be better to a children's author? Like, is there something I can be doing that would make your life easier, your job easier, your whatever? I could buy your book. That's for starters.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, just supporting small
Mhm.
authors,
Yeah.
doing something as simple as like resharing a post where we talk about the book, or even like when this podcast goes out, sending this to someone in the education system that you might know. Um, I think right now everything is about connections and who you know. Um, so yeah, even something as little as sharing something, and that goes such a long way. And I think that could be the difference between like being a here and then just launching and
Yeah. Well, I think people don't realize a lot of times too is like they're like, okay, well, if I share this, what's it really going to do? And it's like, well, if you have 300 friends, that's 300 more pairs of eyeballs that weren't ever going to see this that have now seen it. And if one person, two people, then does, it's just kind of that chain
exactly.
reaction
It's
of like,
literally like a domino effect.
exactly.
Like when I first published and I put it on Instagram, I didn't realize how many people were gonna reshare my post, but so many people reshared it, and I was so shocked. And even someone texted my dad, and it was like a old teammate that my sister used to play with, and so that girl's mom texted my dad and was like, "Hey, we just saw this because my daughter sent it to me," and the mom who texted my dad, like her and her husband work in the education, like in a school, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we want to get this for one of our programs at school." And I was like, literally, if that person didn't send it, like
Never know. That would have never, yeah, there's a whole connection gone right there.
exactly. So yeah, one repost, one reshare, one like sharing it to one person literally makes the biggest difference. And even if they don't buy the book, but at least they know it exists.
Exactly. Or maybe it sparks their thing and they go, oh, hey, I don't have any kids per se, but I got nieces and nephews, and oh, one of them's struggling with something. There you go. Uh, awesome. Where can we go to buy the book?
You can go to mysocialemotionalworld.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Ryan Mojica, and the link is in my bio.
All these links will be in our description to the episode as well. So if you guys are listening in the car or whatever, when you get a chance, go to YouTube, check out all the descriptions, and on any of our posts or anything, we'll put all the necessary information. And
And hopefully one day it'll be in like Barnes and Noble and Target. But stay tuned for the next episode.
boom, I love it. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this for me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to what's next and checking out this book.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Jobology podcast. Thanks, Ryan, for taking the time out of your day to give us some insight on your journey to becoming an author. Before I let you guys go, a couple quick reminders. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow at Jobology Podcast on all major social media platforms. And make sure you put a comment on our YouTube of jobs you guys would like to see in the future. Like we say to end every episode, make good choices.